Welcome to Inner Alchemy with George Stuby, Trauma, Healing and Plant Medicine, the podcast where we explore what it means to heal, grow and transform from the inside out. In these special interview episodes, I sit down with artists, with healers, with visionaries to talk about their personal journeys, the shadows they have faced, and the wisdom they have gathered. From altered states to everyday rituals, these conversations are an invitation to remember who we truly are. I'm George Stuby, a psychologist and musician specializing in the trauma-informed work with plant medicines and with somatic psychology. Welcome to this podcast. Yeah, I'm super excited today to talk to Temple Haze, and he is an American-born and Berlin-based singer-songwriter, producer, and holistic voice coach. And his music is an ever-evolving and ever-changing tapestry, from his roots in blues and gospel music to his explorations into modern trip-hop, ambient, and organic house. Temple combines his spiritual journey and abstract songwriting in a unique world of beat production, creating a deep and intimate musical cornucopia. He also dives deep into sound design and immersive soundscape production. As a co-founder and musical director of Sonero Collective, he creates unique, immersive sound experiences, portraying the best of his universal knowledge and empathetic feeling for creating sonic worlds. Yeah, so welcome to this episode, Temple.
Yeah,
I'm
thanks for having
super
me.
happy that you're here.
Happy to be here, man. Nice to see you.
I think the last time we saw each other was at a medicine festival, actually, right?
Precisely, I think, because I was running one of the stages there called the Sound
Exactly.
Temple, and I think I ran to you asking for something, or you were asking me for something.
I was asking you. Yes, I was running
Yeah,
a workshop and was in desperate need of some power cables, and and then asked
yeah,
you, and we found one at the, I think at the, the teapot.
yeah. It's always a thing at festivals, and then someone needs an XLR or one power cable, and then you're like, "Oh, I can't give you anything. Oh, I can give you this," and then the text says, "Don't give anyone anything," and you're like, "Yeah, but they just need one, and they'll bring it back." Oh, they'll never bring it back. Running to get mic stands. I also remember that, like getting like five
Yeah.
mics
Oh
from
my
the
God.
stage and then having to bring them back. And they're like, "Why did you take those mics then?" There's so many things in festival production that it's chaos, but it's also beautiful to bring all those people together.
It was really beautiful, yeah. And I remember also seeing a live act of yours, which was really beautiful. Like in what I just read out in like organic house, like it, yeah, on one of the other stages. And yeah, we actually met in Berlin, right? Like many years ago through Sarah Wild,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
she
many years
introduced
ago.
us.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's when I look at that, I can see that we both have this background in like also electronic music, but also then like guitar and like spiritual endeavors.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'm curious to hear a bit more about your journey. Um, and yeah, how your musical journey and your spiritual journey kind of overlap or go hand in hand.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, my musical journey really started, I'd say, on the road. When I was about 18, I was reading a lot of Jack Kerouac, specifically the book On the Road, and then other books like Big Sur and so on, and
Mm-hmm.
very into Bob Dylan and really kind of discovering and looking into the really old folk styles of music, and then of course then blues music, and that then connects to gospel music. And there were all these songs about being on the road, right, and experiencing that. And so I really wanted to
Yes.
travel and experience. And so I went out to California because I was born in DC. Went out to California, was working on farms. I was hitchhiking up and down the Highway 101, which is really famous for that,
Mm-hmm.
kind
Of
of like the
course,
hippie
yes.
highway. And all those books talk about it. And back then, which was 2011, it was still possible. It was still, I think it still is today, but it was very easy to go up and down. I remember finding a guitar in a pawn shop. Where was that? It was somewhere in Northern California, and just buying it. And it's a Blue Ridge guitar. It's this one that's behind me, actually. That one
Nice
right.
one. Oh,
And then
perfect.
I traveled all over the US with that guitar. Kind of perfect placement right here next to my head.
Yeah,
It was
it
not
is.
planned. Um, Traveled all around with that guitar, and I was also in like the Occupy movement. I don't know if you remember this.
Mm-hmm.
This happened in like 2011, where it was a lot of people in my generation. We were all very pissed off at capitalism and specifically the university system in the United States.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of protests. Now, granted, it was a lot of more privileged people. Like me and a lot of people at Occupy were middle class kids, but we realized that we had less opportunities and that the university system, specifically how it's set up in the US, didn't make any
Mm.
sense. And that kind of coincided perfectly with my feeling of, oh, I want to be a musician. I don't understand what's going on in this capitalistic world. And I was like playing protest songs at the Occupy movement. So I was like, this is
Oh
perfect
my
for
God.
me. And learning a lot and moving a lot. So there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of kind of this classic troubadour. I used to call myself a traveling troubadour, you know?
Wow.
And I would just travel around, of course not very grounded, but that was kind of the point was you could I'd say it was a bit like being the fool from the tarot card deck, where you're really like experiencing, you're moving forward, you're just seeing what's out there. And it was a great, I'd say, my secondary education because I never went to a proper university. I traveled for about 3 years, 3 or 4 years. And so I traveled through the US, and then I traveled through Europe because I wanted to experience different cultures. I wanted to
Mm.
find more artistic communities, things that weren't necessarily American. Because growing up in the US, everything is very US centric. And
Yes.
I was very interested in meeting different cultures that aren't from that specific space. And so I traveled around Europe. I lived in many different places in Europe, played on the streets in Prague, in Italy, and then made my way to Berlin. And in Berlin, I found a very blossoming artistic community, and also like kind of just a city full of weirdos. And I feel like there's a lot because I have a lot of friends who are um, they're not from Germany who live in Berlin, and all of us, what we have in common is we felt like outsiders in some way, shape, or form where we were from. I feel like that's always kind of a constant for many artists who come to Berlin,
Yes.
and that was really interesting. So there was like, I feel at home here because I'm with all these people who feel like they don't know where they belong, or at least at some point they don't know where they belong.
Yeah.
And then I'd say I had a moment. When I was in Berlin for a while, different projects. I was mainly a front man. I was singing. I was a composer, but really more in rock music and trip hop music, and always live bands. And there was a moment I remember after a show on New Year's at a club here called Kata Blau, where I had this kind of realization sitting around a fire outside. They used to have this outside area called Pampa.
Yes.
And yeah, you remember. And I
I
remember,
built some of that stuff.
oh, really? That's cool.
I once helped out like years ago, like to on a project and put some stuff there.
Yeah, I really loved it. For those who don't know what Pampa was, it was really like this random backyard with all these like self-built things, and there would be like a
Yes,
fire, and
exactly.
like you could go outside of the club, and there's like a fire you can hang out around next to the Spree, next to the river. Um, so that was very cool. But I remember sitting there and having kind of this like transcendental moment of I have a decision to make. And there was no specific, how would you say, there was no expectation of this. I wasn't really thinking about future vision. I was just, 22, 23 years old, and I was
Mm.
just living life. But I had this moment of, you have a decision to make whether you want to continue living this way or you want to find another path and actually create clarity and vision in your life. So it was just this moment where I was, okay, I was kind of confronted by these thoughts or maybe a deeper feeling. And that was kind of the first step for me then to go, okay, why am I actually making music? How does it feel when I play music? Is there a deeper meaning to all of this other than create song, perform song, audience claps, feel good or feel exhausted? And
Mm.
and so I was like, I want to explore, why am I actually doing this? What
Yes.
is this experience? Because also I have to say I was touring a bit with different bands. Like I had a band called Bakery,
Mm-hmm.
a few other ones. And I would have moments after shows where I would feel very drained, very exhausted, where it was like going on stage, kind of giving everything, and then I would come back to myself and go like, "Oh, I don't know where I am," or
Yeah.
"Oh, that was so intense." And I think I realized I needed to find a way to make music sustainable and also understand what it actually is. Like what is creating music. And
Nice.
then I got into yoga, became a yoga teacher, got really deep into meditation, and then slowly but surely did a lot of research and started to get into creating, yeah, different sound immersions, sound trainings. I naturally got into like ambient music and creating immersive sound experiences with my
Yeah.
project Sonero, which then, of course, then led to like working with spatial audio, like 4D sound, and really trying to find new ways to create this kind of new cinematic sound experience genre that really brings people
Yeah.
um, in addition to my other music that I create.
Wow.
But I think where I'm at now is like there's this beautiful harmony of, maybe I would play at a festival or a club, or if I'm creating a sound immersion where everyone's sitting down or laying down with their eyes closed,
Yeah.
they're I'm there with the same intention of
Mm-hmm.
creating this experience of creating community or coherence through the sound. So I feel there's now like a clear coherence of why I do what I do and how I do it through all the branches, whether you're dancing
Yes.
in ecstasy or if you're laying down and completely letting go.
Mm. That's so beautiful. So what I hear is that this moment on the fire after like this gig at New Year's really was about finding the meaning and the purpose in what you do. Is it fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a moment and it was very overwhelming. I'm like, "Oh God, I have to figure out my life."
Yeah, I can relate to that. And and what I also hear is like that, as you said, no matter if you play in a club or do like the immersive experiences, it's about bringing people together. And in my words, I would say it's a form of a ceremony.
Sure.
And that's also something I realized for me. Like nowadays I'm mainly playing music in psychedelic ceremonies, not DJing as much anymore. But yeah, when I'm looking back, for me, like a good club night is also like a ceremony, and it's
Yeah,
like
of course.
transcendence, and it has something very spiritual to it at the core.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, I think when we get out of the idea of the amount of consumption, the use of drugs and
Mm.
alcohol, when you have like conscious parties, or also this is why I love daytime parties, or
Yes,
like day
same.
raves where people are a bit more conscious. Where I mean, that's the point of that repetitive beat is in training people into a state of coherence together, and so that's how we
Yes.
have those moments. But yeah, when I do more like house beat live shows or DJ sets, I also try to be interactive with people when I can, and so that we
Mm.
can kind of break through this barrier of listener and creator, and that we're all kind of
Yeah.
creating this
Thank you.
experience together. Because what's really nice with the dance floor, if you're not, because sometimes these DJ booths are really far away, and I'm really not into that. I really love more the boiler room aesthetic, like where you're in the
Yes, the
space.
people. Yeah.
Then you can really create this very special, intimate space of us all
Yeah.
kind of moving together. And I think when that's done
Mm.
in a conscious way, I mean that's one of the most beautiful, I'd say, ecstatic moments that we can have. So I love both. I think there's a place for both. It's
Yeah.
just a shame that there is so much consumption associated with it, because
Yeah.
I think it maybe throws people off, or some people are then not so into the experience, or say you go to a certain club and you go, oh God, everyone is everyone's out there. Um, yeah, but there's more and more of these conscious
Yeah.
experiences happening, which is very cool.
Yeah. So true. And it reminds me on something Shedamye shared, who was who was in one of the first episodes, or actually the first episode of this podcast. And he said, like, well, he talked about that it's like really seeing the audience and really make the audience seen, and then also they really see you, and yeah, this cohesive togetherness, as you also described it.
Yeah, this exchange that's then
Yeah.
happening, where we're like creating it together. Of course, we as the artists are actually creating the experience, but when you have that exchange with the audience, it's so beautiful, because you know, like what I'll also do sometimes is, you know, someone will make a sound, or they'll like for example, for my last show, someone was laughing and it was like this kind of laugh, and I started going like incorporating what's happening out
That's
there
such
to
a
what.
good idea, man. I love that.
Yeah, and then people are like, "What's going on?" And they always think that I'm actually looping them. It's really funny, and I'm like, "No, no, I just did it myself." But I love these moments, because then you're like, "Hey, we're all in this together," and there's a space for improvisation, which makes
Mm.
everything really alive. You know, of course, there's songs that I can play, but then it's like, "Oh no, we're doing this together," and then it's very like creating more unity, which I feel is why we're actually doing this.
Yeah,
Hopefully is to create unity.
totally. Yeah, I just had to think about like I went to a few concerts last year of Jacob Collier,
Mm.
and he does a lot of the like kind of audience choir, right? That he like guides the audience to sing, and that's like, yeah, it's very special. It's different from just going to a concert where you like, yeah, where you're like the consumer basically, and you leave again as the consumer, but there you brought something in from yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would be curious to hear more about, like, you know, on your journey to where you are right now. What were kind of the biggest personal challenges that you had to face and to overcome?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the one of the biggest challenges I've faced is how to incorporate the different sides of who I am in
Mm-hmm.
the work that I do. So, of course, I come from more of this blues rock and roll background. And so for a lot of my life, I was, you know, there was alcohol use involved, there was marijuana involved, there were other substances involved, and it was really kind of the classic, you know, having well, how do you call it? Having people I looked up to, such as like Jim Morrison or Jimi Hendrix,
Yes.
and looking up to everything they do and thinking that's the gold standard. Um, you know, and kind of this wild abandon, which I have no regrets. Like I'm really happy that I had those times. Um, and then having this big switch where I had like a big switch where I was like yoga, meditation, straight edge, vegan. You know, I went really far to the other extreme.
Yes.
And then I think the bringing together of those worlds was quite a process for me personally of, you know, kind of having this big identity shift, and
Mm-hmm.
then going like, did I leave all of these shadow elements behind? How can I incorporate them so to not like spiritually bypass? Because when you've
Thank you.
gone through all of this stuff, like I went like when I listen to some of my really old material, um, I can it's quite difficult sometimes, because there's a raw energy and there's a sadness that's like vulnerably like being put in the space. I was actually watching a video of mine from 10 years ago, from one of my old bands, and I was like, wow, this song is so nice, because I was talking about it with a friend and I wanted to send them. And I was like, wow, this sounds so nice. And then it gets to the end, and I used to be really known for these moments where I would have kind of Nirvana-esque like shouting in the songs.
Yeah.
And it got to this moment, and then I see myself and how I move towards the mic. There's so much like sadness and aggression. It's like this, "Rah." And it's really good. Like I listen, I'm like, wow, like I get goosebumps myself because I feel like I don't know this person. I'm like, whoa, like wow, this is so intense.
Yes.
Um, but then to also be like, wow, okay, that happened and that was beautiful. A lot of people liked my music because of that, because of this like raw intensity. And then I
Yeah.
moved all the way to this other side of like, oh, let me figure out all these things, moving more with like falsetto vocals, smoother, flowy things. Like my music now is a mixture of kind of soul, R&B, electronica, house music. But really incorporating all of that and not just leaving it behind.
Yeah.
I think that shadow work incorporation process, I've done a lot of work on that in the past like 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And now I feel like I'm in this really good place of, I can pull out the rock and roll energy, where that comes from, because it's a part of me. Also that sadness or that feeling like an outsider,
Yeah.
feeling alone, which is also one of the reasons why I started to make music, because I felt like I had to express something, that I can bring that also into the holistic work that I do. And in that way, it's really, I feel like now there's a really authentic experience and an authentic way to relate, because
Yeah.
there's still, I can open up these spaces for darkness, but I can do it in a way where I'm like sending love and acceptance towards that.
Mm.
What's interesting is
Thank
once
you.
I was able to really send a lot of love and acceptance towards the darker sides of myself, I became much more playful. And now I'm really goofy and playful, where I used to be more like sad boy. Sad boy, tortured artist has become
Yeah.
like goofy, fun guy. Um,
Mm.
but it's still with all of that incorporated. Like I can still go into that
Oh,
space,
thank
but I
you.
say I'm not so identified with the deep sadness,
Yes.
that was there before.
Yeah. So now you see it's a part of you, but it's not you.
Precisely, yeah.
Yeah. That's I love what you shared here, and yeah, that it's like including it and then also transcending it, right? And I think that's really valuable to hear, especially for a lot of artists, because something I've come across also, coaching a lot of artists, is that there's often this belief of like, or there's this story of like, I started my art to express something because I felt like really sad or really like an outside, as you shared. And I'm now realizing that, holding on to that is like making my life pretty miserable. But at the same time, I'm afraid that I'm losing my artistic edge or my inspiration or what's driving me to making art if I would give up those sides. And of course, for me, it's not giving up. It's what you said. It's integrating it. And I think that's really important to hear for a lot of artists, that it's not pushing that away or not killing it, but like meeting it with compassion and then being able to use it in a more conscious way.
Yeah, I totally
So that's
agree.
really cool.
Yeah, really about how can we incorporate that and not push it away. Because I know there was definitely a part of my life where I was pushing away the past me.
Me too,
I've
yeah.
had multiple moments. Like there was a moment when I was 18 where I pushed away past me, and then when I'm 25, pushed away
Yeah.
past me. And then I think, the past 3 years has really been like integrating all the different sides of me, to not let them go, but to send that
Yeah.
acceptance, that love. And I'd say also like I do understand the point about with inspiration. Um, I would say artistically for me, it is easier to create deeper music when I am not in a good kind of mind frame, or I feel like I'm not going where I want to go. Um, but I would then think about like what is the frequency that I'm putting out?
Yes.
And for me, a lot of times then those songs, if they don't have a transformation element into them, I maybe at some point let them go, or I don't feel identified with them later on, where I go, okay, that was more like that was a song for me. That was like a therapy process for me.
Yes.
Because actually when I first started making music, which was playing that guitar and just playing and doing a lot of like finger picking, a lot of folk music based on like Dylan and Woody Guthrie. And I would just make these like sad songs about how I'm alone. And none of those songs I've ever released. And I realized also, because I was working with a therapist, that was my therapeutic process. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And then I had that for a long time. This is my therapeutic process. This is my therapeutic process. What changed is when I started to really express it to other people. So I was then putting this really vulnerable space for other people. And then at some point I realized, what am I actually expressing to everyone through my song?
Yeah.
Because then everyone starts identifying me with all the songs that I'm creating. And then I go, okay, what am I doing? What am I actually putting out there? So when you're able to come more into an observation state of like,
Yeah.
where am I going with my artistic career? And that really changed things for me, because I then also realized, yeah, some of my influences are like Jim Morrison and like This Is the End and like Velvet Underground and songs about drugs and like raw and crazy abstract and raw.
Yes.
Then I also realized, well, I actually grew up with the Beatles. Like I know all of the Beatles songs by heart, and all of that's about love. And actually, there's all these Led Zeppelin songs about love, and there's all these Rolling Stone songs about love. And I was like, and Queen and all these things. I was like, maybe if I can just kind of trick myself at first to say I'm just going to create some songs about love because other people have been successful with that. And then kind of faking it till I make it at first. And then I was like, oh, I really dig this. Also, like gospel music is about like love for the spirit, And there's a lot
Yes.
of blues songs which are about like suffering, but there's a lot where it's like, underneath that suffering is like, babe, I don't want to lose you, like stop that train, like I'm coming for you. And there's like this beautiful desire associated with love. And so I think realizing that love can be the most incredible, endless influence. That was a big game changer for me. And it doesn't have to be that your song is like, all you need is love, but that you're kind of going with that intention
Yeah.
and connecting to that source, which is what I mean, almost every pop song that's been a number one song, not that that's the point, is about love in some way, shape, or form. And all of the music that I grew up with is about love. And that's what we're trying to spread, right? So, I mean, it can sound cliche, but if you're having a hard time finding inspiration, then there's that like endless love that's just kind of everywhere that we can start to like connect to. And I always recommend faking it until you make it, or you could say, I don't feel this at all. It's like, yeah, just go for it. I mean, when I first went to like my first mantra singing circles, I was like, what is this crap? Like, this is terrible. Everyone's just major chords and like, Om Ganesha, la 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 la. And I was like, this is terrible. Being very like judgy musician. And then I had like experiences with different mentors and teachers, and they're like, why don't you just try enjoying this experience? I was
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, good point. And, like allowed myself to just try and see what it's like.
Yeah. Yeah, and in my experience, it's also like, if you want, when you, in my experience, when I had like a meaningful experience with a song or a track or like a type of music in a live setting, I started to hear it differently afterwards. Like hearing certain like house or techno records in a really good club in the right moment changed like how I listen to this kind of music. Or like hearing like medicine songs, for example, in psychedelic ceremonies, changed how I listen to that music. Or like I never really got into reggae, and then I heard the Wailers live recently in the Caribbean on an island on the beach, and I was like, "Fuck, that's fucking amazing music!" And now I'm really digging it. So, and I think it's also connected to understanding the culture of it, or understanding the spirit of it.
Yeah,
and then
and
also
like,
getting introduced to it by good people who can show it to you in a way of, okay, this is what it's about.
yeah, and hearing it in like the right context. I feel like that's so
Yes.
important. Like what you said about like, you know, when I would think of hearing a mantra song, like I would never listen to a mantra on Spotify, to be honest, but I would go to a kirtan and sing with it and be fully into it, right?
Yeah.
Or go to a mantra singing. And with medicine songs, there's only a very few that I listen to. But then of course in ceremonial contexts and so on. Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah. And in that light, I can definitely see that it's so valuable to travel to different cultures and experience the music there.
Yeah, fully.
Yeah. I think, yeah, Quincy Jones said, like, if you want to understand a culture, like, listen to the music, eat the food, and learn some words of the language, and then you start to like really go into it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And I'm wondering if psychedelics or plant medicine were like part of your journey with music and spirituality and finding to what you're doing nowadays.
Sure. Yeah, completely. What would you like to know?
How much and how many? No, that's that's the usual Berlin question after a weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm not interested in that, but I would be interested to know like how those experiences shifted something in your life in general.
Sure. I think the the main thing for me, I think, which is also for many people like this, you know, there's you you get like this shortcut to kind of understanding what the ego is and kind of being able to come more an observer role and realize that maybe our idea of perception or reality is different than just the 3D world that we live in day to day. And I think a lot of that, a lot, of course, also a lot of shadow work that I've done in certain ceremonies,
Yeah.
and it completely changed my life for sure. And I now also I sing many medicine songs. I sing in ceremony, and it's one of the most amazing experiences I've had is to be in a ceremony and play music on the medicine because
Yes, I agree.
there's just like this flow, and I've been playing guitar for like 15, 16 years, so it's kind of just like an extension of my body. And then when I'm on certain types of medicine, I can just flow endlessly. Like there's just this endless creative output, and I can just sing. And what's really interesting, specifically with grandmother medicine, is you know you can work with frequency and tones in a way that's completely different than our 3D reality here, where I realize 'cause I can do little bits of overtone singing, and
Yeah.
I work a lot with understanding what is frequency, the different frequencies, how you create different frequencies with your mouth using, say, like more of the nasal passages, using chest voice, falsetto, um, but where I can move energy with the frequency of my voice. And this is, of course, what, say, like the Shipipo are doing with their Ikaros, same with like Yawanawa tribes, basically anyone singing in ceremony, but specifically with the Ikaros from the Shipipo tradition, you can feel how they move energy with this high falsetto, you know, and these
Yeah.
moving around in that space. And then me, I'm quite an imitator. Like I love Jim Carrey when I was growing up. So when I see something, I hear something, I'm like, I can do that. And then I would like work on these things, and then I would learn different songs and ask for permission for the songs from the person, give, you know,
Yeah. Beautiful.
asking for permission for the song, giving tobacco for the song, and then so that I'm allowed to share the song, not just taking songs I hear in ceremony and singing them everywhere. This is also a kind of moral standpoint I have that we should always ask for songs unless they are meant to be shared everywhere.
Yeah.
Caveat there. But
Important.
you know, working with these frequencies, and then I would feel how it moves my energy, and then I would also ask people, and they would have the same feedback, like noticing how that would change things.
Yeah.
And what I've done really recently is because I do a lot of medicine songs where I sing in Spanish or in Portuguese, or also in Quechua, which is the indigenous rainforest language through like Peru and Brazil. There's different types of it, different types of Quechua. But what I've also been doing is going back to my roots, and there's certain gospel and folk songs that I sing in ceremony, and they have a very specific resonance because it comes from my culture that I grew up with.
Yes.
And people really love that. I feel like it's really special, and it's a way that I'm also like incorporating where I come from and my traditions. And of course, those songs were never meant to be in that context, but you're in ceremony and someone sings Amazing Grace for 10 minutes. It can be a really deep experience for people.
Totally.
So in the ceremonies themselves, I've learned so much about frequency and how to use my voice. And of course, like when I've taken mushrooms or so on my own, I've just had beautiful experiences of realizing that there's so much more to this world than just this 3D reality. And that, of course, has a lot of influence in my music. I like psychedelic sounds. I like it when it's not perfect and things are moving around. And
Space
feel like-
echoes.
yeah, I love space echoes. I love, saturation and weird things happening.
Yeah.
I love being surprised. I love the happy accidents, as you say.
Totally.
Have like something going on in the background of certain nature sounds, or, something that's weird. Let's multiply that. I think that also plays into to having experienced psychedelics in my life.
Wow. So really influenced you on many levels, like personally, as you shared, like about shadow work, but also musically, and I'm sure you also bring a lot of that into like the performances that are not in the ceremony, but let's say in a club night or a festival.
Yeah, I mean, I think, once you start holding space, you never stop.
Yes,
I like kind of,
totally.
and I mean that as a facilitator because
Yeah.
I'm a holistic voice coach. I do these sound trainings where I teach people how to work with sound with my project Scenero. Um, and then of course when I'm in ceremony and I'm singing, I'm also then kind of like, holding space. And when I create these experiences like a live set, I now call it electric groove because I didn't want to call it live set because I feel like this like great, what does that mean? It's
Totally.
Temple Ableton, like what is it actually? And because I see it as like creating these kind of groove ceremonies, and when the audience is really in there, and I really ask people I talk a lot about moving the hips. It's a lot of like, let's move that energy. Let's like get in the floor,
Yeah.
like let's feel into our legs. And also with the voice work I do, there's a lot of, it's always about grounding for me. It's about coming back to the earth. Because I feel like in the society that we live in, and specifically now in 2025, there's so much confusion and like, there's so much uncertainty and anxiety, and it's really about how can we just feel the earth? How can we ground? How can
Yes.
we relax the nervous system? And even do that through an ecstatic experience like dancing. How can I
Totally.
still be grounded in that space?
Yeah.
And so that's been one of my main, I feel like, intentions with the work that I do, is to bring this grounding energy in. And of course, then have moments where we get up and it's super fun and woo and psychedelic, right? Because for me, like a psychedelic experience is very much like spiraling upwards. It's kind of like this woo
Yes.
and it's like, oh, like let go. You don't know what's going to happen. But then to try and anchor ourselves again, which is then the
Yes.
ceremonial aspect, right? Is always anchoring, not getting lost in the woo, but how do I anchor within all the chaos?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And really being in the body, right? And like embodying that.
Yeah, fully.
And you also, I remember you earlier briefly touched on like spiritual bypassing, and for me, that's the antidote to it, like to embody and to really meet what's in the body, and through that also meet the shadows or the trauma, and through that coming back to like the one of my teachers says, like going through the imprints and then coming back to the blueprint through that way, and like realizing both.
Yeah. It's so funny you were talking about this, because now I have like all these props that fit perfectly for this interview.
That's how it goes. Yeah, the body keeps the
Right?
score.
Yeah, because I'm just reading it
Not.
now.
Oh
And
man, it's a really important read. Yeah, great.
yeah, and it's just that we're talking about like embodiment, like somatic
Yeah,
practices, which is like dancing,
yeah.
where we're
Also
allowing ourselves
singing. Yeah, so such
singing.
a
Yeah.
yeah, totally. Um, and also playing guitar, all of that is really like such an overlap of spiritual practice, embodying, being present. Yeah, totally. Yeah, the body keeps the score is a good read. I'm not
Yeah.
something
It,
I'm not such a fan of is his that he's like a bit on the side of that you well he's a bit pessimistic on, at least in the book, on like how, if you can really recover from trauma.
yeah.
And I have a different opinion about that. And in that, have you ever read No Bad Parts?
No, I
Richard
haven't.
Schwartz. I would highly recommend that one. That's from Richard Schwartz. Is like the guy who founded Internal Family Systems, IFS, which is also a big stream in like the like trauma movement.
Hmm.
I would say like the Bessel van der Kolk, Body Keeps the Score, Richard Schwartz, Gabor Mate, and Peter Levine. Like
Sure.
when you read those four, like, and they also reference each other a lot. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's all different perspectives. I mean, I think this book is more
yes,
kind of on the mainstream. He's trying to not make anyone angry, and like also
yeah,
talking about how you can use medication. It's always very good to use medication. It's kind of this more standardized view,
yeah, true.
but really great perspectives in the
Yeah,
book for sure.
and can we briefly touch on like your holistic voice teachings, and like also you mentioned that you teach like how to use sounds. I would love to hear a bit about like what your perspective is there.
Sure. Well, that mainly has to do with my project Sonero, which
Hmm.
we create these sound meditation trainings where we teach people how to work with sound in a holistic way, whether it be like gongs, singing bowls, drums, monochords, different stringed instruments, different melodic instruments, all those things, and also working with the voice.
Yeah,
Um, and we try to create a really authentic perspective where people can really connect with instruments, and that there's not too much musical theory involved. It's more so, how do I
yeah,
go about this experience of being with an instrument? And whether it be a therapeutic instrument, more like a singing bowl or gong, where it's more so you work with creating rhythms and moving completely out of rhythm, where you're just creating out of intuitive flow. And then with melodic instruments, where I teach people how to work with melody and so on. But it's really about this connection and letting go of this idea that there is a correct way to play
yes,
it's
that's so
really about,
important.
yeah, it's about, no, it's about how you connect with it. And we create a lot of space of like jamming, playing, jamming, non-judgmental atmosphere. And it's the same with the voice work. So with the voice work, there's of course deep spaces that we go into a lot with vocalization, because vocalization, which is just basically toning different vowels,
Hmm.
you can get into, it's one of the easiest ways to get into an altered state of consciousness. The same way as
Yes,
actually laying down, closing your eyes, and listening to a sound meditation, also one of the easiest ways. But an active way to bring yourself into an altered state of consciousness is through vocalization. And humans have been doing this forever, since we were able to
yep,
make sound. And we realize there's something special about the vocalization in itself. And then if you learn how to sing in overtones, it's then another level that's brought into it. And then, we were talking about like somatics, then you have the vibration through your body. You connect. What I often do is we're vocalizing, and I keep reminding you to feel your feet in the floor and feel yourself, how you're supported. And at the same time, you're vocalizing, and to really just observe that whole experience. It's really, really deeply therapeutic because you're holding yourself, you're being held, and you're expressing aloud, right? So
Yeah.
there's many different things going on at once, even though for us it's just going, And what's really then interesting is the more people you have together doing the same thing, the deeper these altered states can be, and actually more therapeutic benefit. And then even on the scientific side of things, because there's been studies on choirs, and they've realized that it starts to regulate the endocrine system, so the glands where hormones are produced.
Yeah.
It's also very good for your immune system. For example, hemoglobin A, which is one of the main antibodies to kill off bacteria and viruses. There's one study that showed that hemoglobin A was increased by 150% in choir rehearsals. Yeah, so they checked before and after. And this was over like a 10-week period of them meeting, I think, once or twice a week.
Yeah.
So when you continuously work with your voice in groups, especially, so coming together and singing, it doesn't have to be a choir, but maybe singing with friends, joining a choir, mantra singing, kirtan, whatever it is, it's actually scientifically proven to be very good for your immune system. So there's something about, and scientists cannot explain this, right? They can explain the endorphins that are released, such as like oxytocin, that's also from group experiences, and things like, serotonin and dopamine being regulated well. And I think it also has to do with the fact that singing is very vulnerable. Because we're not speaking, we're just singing, and everyone always looks funny when they sing. This is an underrated point. Even I'm like, it's like everyone looks funny, and that aside, we're all just singing, and it can be like, oh, okay, wow. And I think that coming out of the comfort zone of like, I am doing this, other people can hear me doing this, and I'm standing behind myself doing this. Like, this is the thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
I feel like that's very therapeutic. You get out of the comfort zone, you are expressing yourself, you're doing it aloud, and other people hear you as well. And then I think with groups, that then you're all singing the same tone. So you're all agreeing, basically. We're expressing together, we're all agreeing. And then when we're all singing the same tone, since we can't sing the perfect tone, we're naturally creating overtones within the space.
Yeah, like
then
a chorus.
creating frequencies that then help us go even deeper into altered states of consciousness, right? So, I mean, yeah. And what I find beautiful is the science is continually starting to back these things up, which we've known for centuries through, spiritual practices.
Yeah, that's so true. And I had to think about like, grandmother Aya ceremonies, where it's usually also like a lot of singing together. And it's like, can be like, I had a few of the most ecstatic and joyful moments of my life in these ceremonies from just singing together, because this can be so like, wow.
Yeah.
And one of my music teacher, Joel Holmes, used to be in Berlin, based in Berlin. He's like Afro-American background, and he told me like for him, it's very difficult to, or the other way around. Like he said, like there's nothing that gets really close to like playing music in church or in a ceremony, like coming from gospel and having this communal experience. And I also had to think when you shared about like what Gabor Mate is teaching, that trauma recovery is a lot about feeling vulnerable and safe at the same time, and establishing that in your nervous system. And what you just shared with like music singing is a vulnerable thing. Expressing yourself can be vulnerable, but then being held in the group and being held by the sound kind of really has this element of like being safe and vulnerable at the same time.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. I think that's such a beautiful quote because I feel like that's exactly what's happening there and why people then have these transformative experiences through it.
Yeah,
Um, Yeah, I mean with the
so cool,
voice
man.
and then also with, when they're playing instruments, especially because at our trainings we generally have quite a few people who've never really worked with instruments before, and then we have a few
Yeah.
people who have a bit of experience, and we generally have a few people who
Mm.
are maybe more advanced. And it's really wonderful to see how people start working with it. We teach them a lot about the techniques of how to do it, same with the vocal techniques, but then really about intention and really about awareness. Do everything with awareness. Let go of the idea of how you think you should do this
Yeah.
and open to a space of how you intuitively work with it with awareness. And then, of course, we teach them all about the dynamics and all of that.
So
It's
cool.
interesting because you'll also see how different people connect with different instruments, and then they work with instruments in a different way. Like sometimes we'll see people have instruments together that me and my co-founders never would have thought would fit together, and then you're like, oh wow, that's so interesting. Or
Yeah.
using the voice with the gong, like we've had that once where I'm like, wow, I never thought I would never think to do that myself. So I think when you create these spaces, these non-judgmental spaces where there's clear guidance and really like, this is how we do it. This is how we would recommend you do this. This is how you do this with awareness, and keep bringing it back though to like your intuitive way of doing this is the best way to do it with that awareness really opens people up, and then they're like trying things and playing, and it's a really special experience every year. The two trainings we do, and
Awesome. That's
and then also
wonderful.
with the voice work, it's always connected in that space.
Cool. Wonderful. And I have two short questions left for today.
Sure.
The first one is like, what kind of vision or change would you love to contribute to, like through your work?
Yeah. So one thing that I would like to contribute is really bringing people together so to create these spaces of coherence, whether it be through my electronic live sets or through these immersive sound journeys,
Yeah.
but to really break through this wall of individuality, and that we can really come together in these communal spaces, and in these communal spaces that we can always transmit messages. And for me at the moment, the message is really peace on all different levels. So
Thank you.
peace in the world, of course, with everything that's going on,
Yes.
but also inner peace, and that we can really like regulate ourselves and try to move forward with this feeling of peace.
Yeah.
And when we're all in coherence, when we come together, then we can really do it in that vein of peace. Because I
Yes.
think it's very difficult at the moment. There's so much coming together, and there's so much dissonance in the world. And what we really need is peace and to hear one another,
Yes.
so that we create these interactive spaces where we can really come into that space.
So wonderful that you share that. And I had to think about, I recently did a vision quest.
Oh,
And
wow.
And one question that just popped up in this, being on the other side, was like, how is music and peace, or music and world peace, related? And that's something that I would like to explore this question more. I'm so happy that you just touched on that. And I
Yeah.
feel there were a lot of answers actually to that in this interview, in this
What is
session.
your answer to that?
Well, when I reflect back to the interview, I would say we touched on how music can help us to embody and to regulate ourselves, how music can also be part of shadow work or trauma work. And through those two things, coming more into internal peace.
Mm.
And I'm not quite sure who said that, but the quote is something like, that external peace or world peace is a joke as long as we don't have internal peace.
Sure, yeah.
So that's something I really that really inspired me many years ago. So in that way, one answer could be like using the power of music to come into internal peace has a massive ripple effect then on external peace.
Yeah.
And part of I talked earlier about that I recently had a new connection to reggae, or like a first real connection in the Caribbean. I was like guiding a retreat there on an island, and
Which one?
co-guiding, and it's called Necker Island.
I don't know.
It's like the island of Richard Branson.
Oh, okay.
I co-guided like a breathwork and leadership retreat there, and on the flight back, I downloaded the Bob Marley movie that came out last year, One Love, and I realized, okay, he was really using music for peace and for love, and he was like really like, we're going on stage, even so it's like really dangerous, we might be killed here. But we bring this message.
Factions together also, and like the
exactly, yeah. So that also really inspired me to explore that question more, and I think that's also something you shared, like bringing people together and then bringing their energy together in like in a beautiful way, and experiencing this coherence and this togetherness.
Yeah, and I feel it's so important the way in which, because you can say what you want about Bob Marley's personal life. I mean, we don't know him personally, but the documentary and everything, and it's like with the women and the children, and but when you look at his message and what he did, he was always using love as a way to bring people together, like very much like Martin Luther King, where it was like bringing love, like nonviolence. And I feel we need that message more than ever right now, because there is a lot of injustice that's happening in the world, and it's really important to look at it, and it's really important to speak out about it. Be like, hey, this isn't fine. Hey, we need to think about these things. We need to enable action to change these things, that they don't keep happening and happen more in the future, but that we don't get lost in the space of being really angry about it and then blaming people. Because then, whatever side you agree with, if you just blame the other side, they get more angry at you. And there's a lot of, bypassing that we're all human beings, and maybe certain people are ignorant. But that's not a reason to just shame people, because that creates more dissonance, and that creates more anger and more neo-Nazis. And, and it's like, so we need to also have a space of compassion. And I think that's what's amazing about like what Ram Dass teaches about, where he, this is the story about going to the peace rally, and he's like, well, everyone's really angry here. I don't understand how is this a peace rally when everyone's pissed off? And it's such a funny example, but I think it's a really good point, that I feel we need to get back to that space of nonviolent. I mean, of course, there's a lot of nonviolent protests, but really embodying that, and embodying like, how do we create more peace in our lives? And what I also feel is important is that it's okay to create inner peace in your own life, and then also be active and against whatever wars are happening in the world. You don't have to be stuck in this space of, because you're privileged, you're not allowed to enjoy your life. And I feel there's a lot of people with social media and seeing everything that happens, where they completely lose their sense of inner peace, because they go, well, I don't deserve this. And, if you ask anybody who's in one of those situations, they would say, please enjoy your life as much as possible, because if I had the privilege to be where, say, I am, I would say, hey, please enjoy your life and enjoy that freedom and peace, so that we can come to these things from a space of inner peace. And I think a lot of people agree with this, but it's harder and harder to say this, because then someone says, well, you're anti this or anti that, and you don't understand. And but it's like, okay, why are you attacking me? So I feel like, and that's
it's often also coming from unresolved things, right? Like
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in like the queer and LGBT community, and yeah, learned through that experience that there's a lot of unresolved trauma there, and that a lot of trauma reenactment is happening in that community as well. Like that's like reenacting the trauma that you experienced and haven't resolved, and it's very common. And well, you know, just when you look on the gay community and like the kind of hierarchy that there is on the flesh market, and like if you're like really jacked and really fit and really young, you're like higher up there. And if you're more feminine and more like chubby or something, not, you know, then you have you're looked at, or you're like belittled, or like you're like just like put down a bit. And I always found it quite interesting in terms of, you know, all of you clearly went through a lot of marginalization and a lot of trouble. And why is this like why is this just reenacted here? But I feel like trauma and unresolved trauma is an answer for that, and also like in a lot of so-called open-minded communities, there's a lot of bypass stuff coming back to that. So I think that's also like cycling to what you just shared. And as a last question, like if people would love to find out more about your trainings, about your teachings, about your music, like where can they go to?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to come to one of my shows, you can follow me on Instagram or check out my website. That's Temple Haze, or at Temple Haze. And then if you want to join one of our trainings with Suniro, we have our next training in October of this year, and then also another one in May next year. And you can learn all about that at suniro.com, or follow us at Suniro Collective.
How do you spell that? Just for people to know.
Soneiro. So
Awesome.
Nairo. And you can find us there. Oh, and I also do a 4-week online holistic voice therapy training. So
Cool,
where
man. I love that.
it's a voice course, and I teach you a lot of the things that I've learned from being a holistic voice coach. So if you want to really dive specifically into that, you can find all about that on my website. And
So cool, man. I love that.
yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time. I feel we could go on for another hour.
Yeah, sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was so nice. Thank you for having me on. I loved all the questions. I love that all my props worked perfectly.
Yes.
Like, this is why I always have my guitars behind me. I was waiting for this one conversation
To
I could
like-
just swivel my head. Like I'm on TikTok, you know.
Yes.
No, I had a great time. Really, really lovely to see you, brother.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for joining me on Inner Alchemy. If today's session resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit. To explore more or work with me, you can visit my website, georgestuby.com, or you can find me also on Instagram as I am George Stuby. And yeah, until next time, may you stay present and embodied and in flow, and sending you much love.